You blink and you're already.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I was
Um,
trimming my beard this morning and I found my first gray lip hair.
oh no!
It's all downhill from here.
You're not allowed to have those.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm like,
You're still too young and spry.
right. As I crack my back.
Don't remind me, man. Don't remind me. I try to like keep up with the kiddos.
The kiddos.
You can't. You can't. We're aging fast. That's why
No.
you gotta focus so diligently on clean and healthy living, right?
Yes. And you know what? That's a funny segue. Um, I'm not having fun looking at movie stars of my childhood get old and wrinkly. You don't see them, and because you see your movies over and over again, like, oh, I want to see that again, you forget that they're human and they age, and then you forget that you age. And I think
Dude,
once
it
you,
is so funny you say that. Crazy ADD thought just before you joined the meeting here.
yeah,
I was listening to Dick Van Dyke
okay,
on Jimmy Kimmel.
okay,
He's so old. His oldest kid is 78. He has a kid that's 74.
he has a
He said, I'm
kid.
old enough to be Joe Biden's dad. Digest that. That's crazy. That's crazy.
You know what? What affects that is nowadays people are having kids a lot later, and I'm one of those people. Um, and so when you hear that, I'm like, what is he like 120? You know, like no, he must have been like 16 or something when he had his first kid.
I mean, when you're Dick Van Dyke in the 40s, I
That you know
mean,
of.
yeah, right, dude. It's so funny you say that though, because I get highly concerned. I'm so excited to talk to you, my
Yeah.
friend, because it's been a while, and one of the fun things about talking to you is you always draw upon like movies, and I got to tell you, John, Idiocracy looms upon us so strong. I couldn't be more concerned. So, as you're talking about how people are having kids later, for those of you who don't know about, Idiocracy, it starts off with the the two lawyers that are like, we're not going to have kids quite yet. We want to get our careers started, and once we get financially stable, we plan on having a strong family. And then it cuts to like these hillbillies in a trailer park, and he's like, "That's my baby. That's my baby. She's pregnant." And then it cuts back to the attorneys like 10 years later, and they're like, "Well, now that we're financially stable and able to have kids, we're not able to really have them." She's like, "What do you mean we? It's not my swimmers that don't work." And then it cuts
Yeah.
back to the hillbillies, and he's like got a 16-year-old kid that's like on the football field. I just got the cheerleader pregnant. So it's like the story is how the idiots quickly outpopulate the more sophisticated members of your society.
Mm.
And John, I don't know. I feel like I'm having a front row seat to the premise of this whole movie.
You know, that's the only reason why I haven't bought Crocs yet. You
Isn't that hilarious? That like the guy who created the movie was like, I needed to come up with a shoe that would highlight the moronic future that we were leading to, and Crocs, emulate that perfectly, and
the
we are
whole
embracing it like a meme.
apparently the whole production team agreed that this is not going to be a successful shoe. This is a ridiculous shoe. No way. We all agree. We're going to put our whole everything into this decision. This is not going to happen. This is a perfect product. Yeah.
Well, I just gotta say, first, there's been at least a development with the shoe. They keep trying to update, but John, this is the extent of updates when it comes to a Croc. Like, it's sad that Kanye, his futuristic shoe, the Yeezy Slide,
The
is
Yeezy
just like
slide.
a glorified Croc. But like,
That's just a business move. You you see what people want and you're going for it, you know? I
How
saw
do how
what do
does
you
this
call them?
appeal to people, dude?
Because of convenience, honestly.
Oh, you're so right. Oh, you're
Convenience,
so
just slip that on. Do you have to, you spray that with the backyard hose, you're good to go, like for- and then also the accessories, you like to buy
yes.
things, you want to accessorize. I forgot what they're called, but the Crocs, I think the funniest Croc accessory, this became like this hazing of Crocs. The accessory that I find the funniest is it's another Croc.
What, it's like one of those attachable, like,
Yes,
and it's a Croc.
it's another
Crocs on my
Croc,
Crocs.
right?
No, I
And
have to say, I think my favorite is there's a snowplow that you could put on the front of your Croc. I think that one's takes the cake for me. But again, we just walk into idiocracy grinning. What how do
Mhm.
you make plants grow? Not with
Kool-Aid, obviously.
Kool-Aid. You not the stuff in the toilet, not that water.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think
Um,
it was Gatorade. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. All right, you ready to get this thing going?
Yeah.
All right, let's kick it off.
So I love that term, think tank. Think tank. You know what a think tank is? Like, how's a think tank go, James?
Yeah, they got cancel culture nowadays. You gotta watch what you say. It's getting real scary out here.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know if I can take the conversation here, but we might as well. It's the Rethink Tank. Looks like you had a little bit too much to think here in the Rethink Tank.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? And thanks for joining us again. Today, I have a really special guest. I couldn't be more excited. And we're going to tap into being mindful and becoming your best self. And there's no better guider of that endeavor and that journey than my good friend, Jon Astacio. Jon from NewAgeHuman, how are you doing, my good friend?
I'm doing good, man. How's it going?
It's been a while. That's why I'm so excited to talk to you. It's been too
Mhm.
long. So, one of the things I'm eager to launchpad the conversation with is in the meantime, since I've last spoken to you, you've kind of taken on this pursuit of immersive meditation. And,
Yeah.
people can go to your channel and try to schedule an appointment for that. But I'm curious, what does that entail? And what is some of the things you've learned by taking that on?
Um, it's kind of funny because it all stemmed from me trying to find ways to help people with similar challenges as myself. And immersive meditation helps you take back control of your mind. Not only that, but helps you reconnect with yourself. And nowadays, especially nowadays, with social media
Right.
and a lot of the technology that we love to play with, we're connected with everybody, but at the same time, we ended up disconnecting from ourselves. And I fell into that trap where I would just be chasing after the shiny object, which would be other people's goals and aspirations, because I thought that, I sought outside of myself so that I can find fulfillment. And when I started the podcast, it was a continuation of that. And a lot of the guests were really amazing people, but I felt I still needed to fill in my gaps, so to speak. And I ran into immersive meditation. So when like there's all kinds of meditations, and I didn't know this. I thought it was just, shut up the brain, and then and then go and walk on water or walk through walls. Like, I thought it was just this magical thing. And it's as simple as where sometimes you have your phone and it's slow, or your computer's slow, and you're downloading all this software, and then it gets even slower, and the software is supposed to help you, and then you're like, I don't know what to do. And then someone that actually knows computers tells you, have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in? Have you power cycled it? And you're like, why? And it's like, because like you need a break. You need to
Right.
just shut it down and reboot and come back with fresh eyes. And I feel like a lot of us are just downloading other software, like this guru, that program, that product, that car. It's going to help me become more, when you have everything. You just need to just quiet and go for a walk or something. So immersive meditation just helps you with that. It's a mixture of guided meditation because if you are coming from a place of overthinking like me, I overthought meditation. And I had a hard time getting my brain to be quiet. And it's not about getting your brain to be quiet. I think the biggest step was to realize that you are not your thoughts. And
Yeah.
I'll finish it there because I don't know if you have any questions, and I can keep going.
Well, so let me ask you this then. With people, getting in line to make appointments, and I saw on your Instagram over the last few months, at least kicking off in August, you've been doing live sessions where people can join. So, what is kind of that experience like? Like, what would somebody be signing up for? What does that look like?
Sure.
What is the
Interest,
exercise?
Interesting enough, I was brainstorming ways to connect with more people because knowing myself, I'm like, okay, so if I overthink this, right? Um, what would
Never.
I
We
do,
don't
right?
do that.
So overthinking the thinking. No, so I started the monthly meditations, and I actually ended up putting a pause to that. But the reason why I started doing that was to give people access to an immersive meditation, just a session of taking a break, getting a recharge. And I was inspired because a friend of mine did a physical event where we all came together, and we had speakers, and everybody had their topic, but it was cool because after the event we all jumped into the water because it was at a
Oh,
lake,
geez.
and it was just before the water gets too cold for your average person to
Where was this
want to go in
located?
the water. It was like pre-spring, and so the wild people that we all just ran into the water. Some of us got cut because we fell and scraped ourselves, but like it was a shock to the system, and we all went from handshaking and being very cordial to giving hugs, connecting with numbers, talking about our life stories. It broke the ice. And I feel like a lot of people nowadays need something like that to break the ice. And so the things that I'm working on in the future are things of that nature to help professionals and entrepreneurs that are trying to get to that next level of their success, and providing tools to, recharge, so to speak, whether it's immersive meditation, lifestyle changes, diet. Right now, immersive meditation I'm focusing on because it's something that you can do that I can help you with, that can give you and yield the fastest results. And the other things like lifestyle changes and diet, those are more long-term things.
Sure. And they really go hand in hand with each other, right? So like you you need to take on the exercise at home. That's the at home work, your diet, literal physical exercise, and the amount of sleep you allow yourself. All of that compounds on itself, but you can't accomplish the long term in a session. Those are habits you need to develop. And it was so funny also, something I was getting involved with today. I was hearing an exclamation of how humans, because we're faulty, we make about 5 problematic or faulty decisions a day that are what are taking us backwards. And if we were to conquer those 5 like failure decisions, we'd be able to be our strongest selves. And so much of that is like people who drink, well, I'll just drink a couple times, and then, on the weekend, I'll really treat myself. And then before you know it, you've developed a habit where you're doing it more than you really thought you would. And, now you've been doing it for 5, 10, 15 years. You've gained 30 pounds. You're not getting, or, it's been a year. I'm going to get back into exercise and daily. And then it's been 2 years, 4 years, and now you've put on 30 pounds.
Yeah.
Whether it's, for me, it's candy. I love candy. That is what it is. But it's conquering that. Well, it's late at night, no one's around. I can cheat, and then before you know it, that's just your habit, and that's
Hmm.
become who you are. And the phrase that went along with this was, a tree is the way it leans. So like you end up growing and becoming who you are based on just that little bit you lean, and it becomes more and more defining of who you are. So it's so important to conquer those like 3 to 5 decisions a day where it's like, yeah, no. I was listening to Joe Rogan talk to Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs just recently, and it was about how nobody likes doing cold plunges. And Joe's like, I've done it every day, and I've yet to find a time where I like to do it. I've never wanted to do it. It's the worst. And it's kind of one of those, well, I've conquered the toughest thing of my day, and the rest of my day is even stronger from that. So it's one of those that doesn't have to be it for you, but having something in your life that represents that daily challenge that you have to overcome. And then once you conquer it, you have the whole day ahead of you. And it makes those other couple decisions that are going to follow it like, hell no, I don't need a Big Mac. I'm going for, hard boiled eggs because I'm not wasting that grind I put in this morning. If you didn't put any grind in, if you've like invested no suffering into this, and then you wake up and now you're faced with a decision of salad. Well, I don't like rabbit food, or McDonald's French fries are crack. So you could go for the crack. And before you know it, it's easier and easier to make those terrible decisions because you're not sacrificing anything. You're not investing anything. And again, who doesn't want to have a drink on a Thursday night? It's been a long week, and yeah, I could go for a glass of wine, but the more and more you develop that as the habit, the thing that you lean on more so than like a treat or a social occasion, then it becomes a real problem. So I can appreciate that. So what are some of the topics you delve into in these immersive meditations?
It's interesting how you say topics. And I want to touch
Like
on what you said
themes or
about
targets.
Yeah. I also want to touch on what you said about those 5 decisions, right?
Yeah, hit that first.
I think it was Einstein that said the same mind that caused the challenge is not the same mind that can find the solution. And there's a book I really love, and I did an episode where we touched up on it a little bit, but Power versus Force is the book, and David Hawkins is the author. It talks about the levels of consciousness. And if you were to gauge the levels of consciousness and try to digest that, I usually use the analogy of cell phones. And depending on how old you are, will depend on your experience with 3G, 4G, 5G, and 6G. And what is this G for cell phones? Each G is a generation. Each generation is a faster wavelength. And with a faster wavelength, or just a faster waveform frequency, you can process more data. Easy enough, right? So the next generation, you could do more. And so with each generation of phones, we were just able to do more. But when you do more, you end up becoming more because you have more experience. And there's an acceleration with that. So think of the mind and that term where you have different levels of consciousness. Well, this guy used kinesthesiology to map out the levels of consciousness. And it's a muscle testing formula. So he used the body to understand the body, which was really cool. Now, if you think about it, those 5 decisions that you make, if you want to level up your lifestyle, whether it's your career or your business, it's those decisions you make every day that matter the most. So how do you level up your mind? Because everything starts in the mind. Whether you like it or not, that's our entry into the physical realm. And this is where it gets really deep. But keeping it digestible for the topic, when you start with the mind, everything else trickles out. There's times where you have a hypnotist that convinces somebody that they're going to burn them on their arm, and they use a number 2 pencil and they just touch them with the eraser, and their arm bubbles with a almost 2nd-degree burn. It's the mind that's doing a lot of the work. The placebo effect, it's an effect, right? And they think about your health. There's a lot of people that sometimes overthink the health, and they're unhealthier than the person that doesn't overthink their health. And it's like, what's going on? You're annoying. right?
It's the Mickey Mantle gene.
Right. You have like these centurions, people that lived 100 years, and they a lot of times they say, don't stress it, and that's a major part. But also, food back then was a lot better. So they had 2 real big things going on. So the reason why I brought those things up is if you can focus on your mindset and let's say finding ways to level that up, have more mental clarity. Um, I'll ask you, if you had more mental clarity and you were able to level up your mind, let's say you went from your average, let's say, quote unquote, 3G to 4G on your day-to-day basis, what do you think is going to happen to your decision-making ability?
Oh, everything. And so that's like the delicate balance. Can we agree?
Yeah.
Super evil villain, but Bill Gates is an accomplished man, irrefutably, right? Like we can at least acknowledge that the guy had now, everybody says his mother handed him a lot of his launch padding resource and, cloak and dagger background, but irrefutably, I would say he's an accomplished or at least effective person. I wouldn't say super successful. He is super successful, but also at what cost? So
Yeah.
I bring him up because you have instances where
Say the thing.
I'm trying. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to walk a very fine line. Because I regret kind of where I was going with that. When you ask about like clarity of mind, right? Bill Gates prided himself on like sleep is for suckers. That's really what he is, a position he takes. However, if you listen to like sleep experts, sleep is so important for you. But like John, as somebody who has an 8-hour-a-day job, but then is also trying to build like a strong network that is going against like the Goliath mechanism that's trying to support it or suppress it. It's very difficult to find enough time in the day. So I really find more justification for not having enough sleep than some of my friends who, again, they're the best at their hobbies. Nobody's a better snowboarder. Everybody, but at the same time, they're in bed by 8. They're like they're not building anything. So it's like one of those cog in the machine, be the gear that gets everything else moving, but you're best rested and you're at the peak of health, or things be compromised. Like when you say, do you want like mental clarity? Here's what I say. If I went to bed at 8 o'clock and I woke up at 6 a.m. when I normally do, I am like a titan the next day. If I go to bed at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, I got a little bit more done, still nowhere near enough. But I'm good. I'm pretty solid. But the second I'm going to bed at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., or at the worst, because I'm really moving and shit's grinding, and I go to bed at 3, I am dragging in the morning. But you take some Neuro Gum or Alpha Brain and a cup of coffee, and you just keep on pumping. And I got pretty much another half a human's workday in, if not a full workday in, another one. On top of the gig, the job that pays the bills, did a whole nother gig. And it at least leaves me feeling like, I outpaced you, my neighbor, not you, John. John's right here striding ahead of us. If not, so at you, the listener, I've outpaced you. But man, look at you, don't have the bags under your eyes. Like you're well rested. So I'm there with the mental clarity, but also I think if your brain's a muscle just as much as your biceps a muscle. And so I think if you're a well-read, strong-minded person, some of those things, I could be sharper. And again, catch me on the month. Like I bet you in June, I'm way more well-rested. I'm like getting all the vitamin D. I'm sleeping a little bit more. And yeah, catch me in December and I'm not sleeping as much because it's gray outside and I can really work and I can't go golfing. I mean, if I was golfing, if that was being balanced with golf, it'd be a whole different world. So in my long-winded answer is, of course, that's the goal. And you're going to have your peaks and your valleys, your highs and your lows, and you're trying to find a lifestyle that kind of gets that as in the middle as possible. Because I really don't think I'm ever going to be The Rock. I'm not going to be Joe Rogan, but I refuse to. We got people at my work, John, that one day chose walking up the steps was too tiring. It was too tiring one day. And then ever since making that decision, it became a part of their reality. I can't do the steps. And it snowballed and it snowballed and it snowballed to the point where now you really can't do the steps like you could have. And if you kept at it, it wouldn't have been as tiring. But one day you made the decision and it got to a point where you're crippled. You can't even go up the steps. So you got to know you're not that guy. But am I really going to be Joe Rogan? No. But it'd be good to be like 40 and being able to do a Tough Mudder. You don't have to be first place, but if you could go through that bad boy, there's something to be said.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting what you said, where something that popped up to mind, the visual of the cog in the wheel, and then at the same time going to sleep later. And my thought was two things I wanted to address, because you brought up a really good point. You have this hustle culture where, like, not the famous rapper Nas from the 2000s, sleep is the cousin of death. And that
See?
really pissed me off when I heard that. When, in the days where I would listen to his albums and stuff. And nowadays I'm like, one of the biggest reasons why I had a lot of challenges in my 20s, from, I mean, relationships to career to business, and constantly failing and falling short, was poor sleep. And even when I would go to sleep, I wouldn't sleep well. I would just lay in bed and just stare at my eyelids, you know?
Oh,
And
yeah.
there are things that are inside of us that we might not be aware of that keep us up at night. And it takes time to go within to discover those things. I have one of my clients, he asked me, he said, I want to know what my unconscious habits are. He has a lot of plans. He has his career, which is it gets paid decent, pretty well. And then he has all these different business projects, but he's like, something like, I know I can be further, and what's going on? And I see him and his eyes are like just blood. Like, I know him. I would tell him, get some sleep. And he's like, yeah, I know. Everybody keeps telling me that. Get some sleep. And he'll get 4 hours in, 5 hours in, and just go out of his way. And so we went through this, what we would call the journey within. That's that 6-week program that I helped him with. And we used immersive meditation, and that was his focus. And there were some things that came up that was surprising to him. And for me, I was excited for him to see. And one of those things was that he recognized, again, he gave himself time to go within to identify some things that he forgot about that became habits. And one of those things was, as a kid, I think he was the oldest brother, and then he had cousins, and he ended up having to take care of a lot of people. So he built the habit of overworking himself beyond what's necessary, and he became the big brother to a lot of people. And at the same time, that's more workload, more unnecessary workload. So therefore, you lose sleep because you prioritize helping other people more than yourself. And that was one revelation for him. And then another thing was, he had a romance that was lacking closure. And
Sure.
that could keep you up at night, not even knowing about it. You can have weird dreams, right? And that dreams is another thing, because it's never a straight answer. And it's usually not the person that pops up that you need to help. If it is that person,
Yeah.
usually that's red flag. You need to work on that. But things pop up, and your body, just like a car, has all these check engine signals, the pain. And if you pop an Advil, you're not going to know that there's still a check engine signal. And so there's reasons why you have these aches and pains. There's reasons why you're tired. There's reasons why you start hallucinating if you don't sleep. So with him, it was just interesting. And he took advantage of this increased awareness, and reconnected with that person that he needed closure with, and they actually opened up a new level of connection where they are in touch now, and he's just a notch or two happier because of that. He has been organizing his life around what his goals are instead of other people's goals. He's at the point where he's writing a book. He's starting to
nice.
do events and seminars, and it's exciting how a couple of weeks helped accelerate some
Wait, are
of
you
the
saying
goals that he
sleep
had.
did this for him?
So it was the awareness of that. So it was sleep was like one of those obvious things, right? The check engine light. And then people are like, "Hey, your check engine light is dinging." Yeah. Give me some black tape and just put it over it. It's okay. Pump the music louder. That's what a lot of people end up doing. But because he understood why the quote unquote check engine light was going on, the why he wasn't sleeping and not prioritizing it, he started to prioritize that, and those changes that he didn't know were connected to lack of sleep, he made those changes. And so yes, he's sleeping much better now. But yeah, sleep is huge. And it could be like, instead of popping I forgot, like supplements so they can sleep better, right? Now you're just artificially inducing your body to sleep, and your body already has its checks and balances and systems. So if you're forcing one thing to happen, something else is going to kick out of gear, right? The body is its own ecosystem. Just listen to the body. It's trying to tell you what to do. We call that the still inner voice, right? The quiet voice where you're like, I knew I should have turn left. I knew I should have spoke to that girl. I knew I should have said no to that opportunity. But it's usually a whisper, right? And if you don't take the time to like reset, maybe go golfing, take a hike in the woods, meditate, give yourself some time. If you need guidance, go that direction. That voice is going to be very, very quiet.
Fair. The voice is gonna be very quiet. It's kind of like an instinct. You gotta kind of feel it, and it's a light touch.
Yeah.
I appreciate the point about hustle culture, and it's we put it under that guise because it makes it feel tougher. It makes it feel more romantic. But the reality is, you know, the way people also talk about it is we're in this capitalist society, and that's how they're able to mask the guise of comfortable slavery. And that's kind of what the system is. But also that may be what the system is. But it's free enough. It's free enough that for those that truly do, and a couple that hit the lottery, like that's just also an element to this capitalist society.
And
Like
you
you
gotta be
just
ready for
get
that,
lucky
too.
sometimes. But there's also a mechanism for those that put in the time. Not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur or somebody that, you know, becomes a lottery winning content creator or something else. But if you just wanted to be a pharmacist and you just put in the time, you could accomplish that and have a very comfortable living. But sometimes just very comfortable isn't enough. And that's kind of the, you know, carrot that keeps the gears of this place moving. The exciting part about our nation is that, you know, everybody has that opportunity. However, circling back to that hustle culture, some people say if this is that, you know, camouflage slavery, part of the mechanism of keeping everybody running is this fool's dream that they've planted in everybody's head that we're all billionaires waiting to happen. We just haven't reached our full potential yet. And that's what keeps us, you know, invested heavily into this. And so if I were to give advice to anybody, the strongest way to do it, if you were going to try to play the lottery, because that's what it is, you're putting all you're playing roulette. You're playing roulette, and you're putting all your chips on 21, and you've got a 1 in 32 chance. It's not very likely at all. But guess what? If that can't be your full commitment, like for the person that's committed their whole life to Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm going to be a singer. It's like, do you know how many other folks are there? And it's one thing to go, you know what? I'm going to go be an engineer. And then in my free time, I'm going to give every minute to being a singer. And if 21 hits, I'm never going to work again. But that's also very not likely. So I need to have a mechanism where I'm not just a waiter, because that's the LA dream, right? Like everybody's just waiting tables and hoping to get their Seinfeld sitcom. And that's not how you should play this game. If you still want to be a functioning member of society, if 21 doesn't hit, then you got to have a pretty solid base. And honestly, that requires an extra layer of work that most people aren't going to. And I like the way you sell the point that you make, which is you can't overexert yourself. And so there is a balance to it. And so if you're going to give 8 hours to your regular career that turns the lights on and keeps the internet going and pays the cable bill so you could go on your TikTok, then you have to have maybe not so extensive that you're cheating yourself the 4 hours of sleep, but you still need to invest an extra amount of time. So I come back to that balance, and it's tough to find the perfect balance because, like I said, it's going to ebb and flow. We're humans. But I think it's easier said than done when we take the message of listen to your body, because I want to ask you this. Would you rather be the corn husker in Europe that gets all their sleep and their teeth are falling out, and, you know, they watched us go to the moon? I'm standing on the moon like, hey, and you watched us do that. You watched us come up with all of the, society-changing medicine. That iPhone in your hand, you're welcome. All of those social medias that you enjoy, except for the one Chinese one, you're welcome. It's this balance of I don't know if you've left the country or how recent it's been, but if you go to Europe, it's a great experience, but it's not a lifestyle because you're seeing a society frozen in time. It is a window into the past, but that's where they're comfortably living. And so while Europe and, go to Sweden, look at Switzerland, they have all these beautiful programs and initiatives, but also they have progressed zero in comparison to the societies that maybe have dangerous symptoms to them and create dangerous cultures, but maybe that's the cost at getting extreme payouts as well. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Because I'd love to take the time. Europe's got nothing but time, but they're also not conquering anything.
So would I rather be a corn husker, right, with no teeth? I think
Can't even eat your corn, dude.
Can I at least have my teeth? Because then I can't enjoy my own corn.
No, fluoride is a bad thing, they say.
Right.
Right.
I agree. So one word that pops up to my mind when you started saying that was fulfillment. And if you don't know what fulfillment is for you, then it's easy to default into the program that exists around you, whether you're in the US or in the UK or in any other country or continent. And I feel that when you are more clear on what makes you fulfilled, you don't waste time chasing dreams and aspirations that likely don't serve you or just serve the moment.
Hey.
And then at the end, what will happen was, or what would happen is, if you didn't figure it out on the way up, because action at the end of the day helps you speed up that process to fulfillment as well. So there's just different ways to go. Do you want to go and just run barefoot in the street and figure out later on that you need to choose, right? It depends on your progress, your process. And some of us don't even have the choice to do so. All I could do is just AOMA, all out massive action. So fulfillment right there, I see it as there are people that there's nothing wrong with wanting to create technology. There's nothing wrong with wanting to go to the moon. I've been wanting to go off planet for the longest time. I still do want to experience that because it's an experience, right? But when you understand what
How are you going to
fulfillment
get
is,
through the dome?
right? Right? It would be great. That's another thing. Right? Flat Earth, circular Earth,
Oh, we're going
round
to get to that.
Earth.
We're going to end that episode. I got questions for you.
But as far as like fulfillment is, it's like if you can get to, or if you know what fulfillment means to you sooner, then you can get to that happiness point a lot faster. For me, it took me a while and I'm still in that process, but I noticed that I get caught up, or have been getting caught up in all these different tangents on trying to know more stuff, where I became the person that was just annoying, where it's like, did you know dot dot dot? And then when I see the eyeballs glaze over, I'm like, I went too far. Um, and I had to meditate on that and ask myself, why do I have this gluttony for knowledge? And a lot of that, again, I had to give myself a reset and ask that question. But at the end of the day, it had to be, it stems from the need for the feeling of being important. And once I started to work on, okay, so what helps me feel content or important or enough? I started to work on those things and ask those questions. And then it was less of a need for me to be the talking head when I go out and network and and catch up with friends. And it was less of over talking and more listening, which actually strengthened my relationships. I felt more content with my connections with people. And that's one small awareness of self that can change a lot of things. Just imagine of all these other things we need to work on. So some people, part of their fulfillment is creating things, and that's where we have the inventors, right? And a lot of these inventors, if there's like, I think it's chapter 12 in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, where he talks about where there's this collective consciousness where people that are the world changers, the inventors, they connected, they downloaded stuff, they gave themselves time to quiet their mind or just listen to their creative juices. And they came up with some amazing stuff because they weren't chasing what everybody else was chasing. They actually found what they wanted and what their fulfillment is, and they took action on it. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. So your answer, would you say, boils down to fulfillment? But my question then kind of follows up with, how does that manifest itself? Like how does one actually, I mean, here's one thing, and I don't know where you fall on that spiritual spectrum, but like if you're not a very religious person, you may not relate to this, but it's said that you're not supposed to really, like, your urges and your temptations and the things you lust for aren't necessarily always what you should have or do. So, Ben Shapiro gets criticized all the time when he says, yeah, I totally believe that there's people that are gay. It's that, according to his religious book, there are people that are gay, and that's God's challenge for you, and you're supposed to resist that urge. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but like there's a belief that, and it manifests itself in different religions and different cultures. So I circle back to fulfillment. Like if you satisfy every urge, you might have this faux version of fulfillment, but you're not actually fulfilled. And so I'd want to toe the line of making clear to somebody discovering that journey that you're not supposed to just satisfy every little inkling and urge that you have. And then how do you know you're actually being fulfilled versus just scratching an itch? Like, I have a sweet tooth. Like, you give yourself the sugar, that's not it. Like, because you wanted it doesn't mean that you're fulfilled. So, maybe you didn't realize that climbing that giant mountain at the top was fulfillment. And so actually, oh man, who would have realized it was a long road of pain and suffering that got me to the crest of fulfillment? It's like, how do you know you've manifested it?
Good question. And well, one thing is the journey to fulfillment is a constant journey. And if you were to, what helps me make sense of stuff is thinking about humanity as an organism, as one organism.
I like that.
And your body is a universe of organs and cells and bacteria and the things we put inside ourselves that we decide to do or not to do. But if you think of it that way, that's also how people that I'm like, how do I put this like in a way to that's like clear and concise, right? So
Right,
going
it's
back
tough.
to the body being the universe, if you think of it like that, then it'll be a little bit different because what's fulfilling for yourself is going to be different based off of your worldview, and your worldview changes as you gain more fulfillment. Because going back to what I said about levels of consciousness, right? Someone that's at quote unquote 3G is going to do different things and be fulfilled differently than someone at 4G. And once you fulfill the things and some things in 3G, you bump up to 4G. And when you start getting fulfillment in 4G, you bump up to 5G, right? And
Real quick, can
Yeah.
you like
break that
I don't
down.
want to just gloss over that. So you're kind of flirting with the concept that like people are operating on waves and frequencies.
Right.
So what do you mean by somebody's a 3G person?
Right. Okay.
Is it because they're on an iPhone 4?
I use that analogy because I know all of us have phones, right? And so when we got our phone upgrade, it's going to be faster. You're going to be able to do more. It's exciting. So
So it's more metaphorical.
it's metaphorical, but there is something to be said about actual frequencies, which could be a different episode. But there are frequencies, right? You have your beta and all your alpha, the ones that are good for sleep, ones that are good for during the day, and then there's bigger ones, interesting ones that tie you with thought patterns. Okay, there's certain levels of consciousness that you can use muscle testing for to see what level you are based off of a system someone made, that each level is tied to different belief structures and thought patterns. To give you an example, just real quick, basic, oversimplified, and makes my inner child, inner being cry when I oversimplify it. But this is my process of making it at least digestible. You have level 0 to 1,000, right? And let's say for ease of math, you go up by levels of 100. And from 100 to 200 is like exponential. It's not a double, it's exponential. Okay. So knowing that, when people have done muscle testing and use the same system, okay, these are different people. And in the book, level 200 is like an interesting point, an interesting intersection of change. Level 200, okay? Anything below that's like 50-50. 50% of your thoughts are negative, 50% of your thoughts are positive.
Okay.
Below 200, mostly negative and less positive. Above 200, mostly positive and less negative. So you can think as you go further away and above 200, you're going to have a higher percentage of positive thoughts. So logic says you're just going to have a wonderful life if most of your thoughts are positive. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to follow them to their house and do horrible things to them, instead of saying that, right? Maybe if you had a higher amount of positive thoughts roaming around, one of those thoughts can be pulled and say, you know what? There's a lot of reasons for people to cut me off in traffic. Hey, maybe he's on the way to the emergency room. maybe he's late for an interview. I don't know. And if I yell, is that person going to hear me? So you'll have more patience, right? And so just things end up getting better. And if you are in that mindset of seeking fulfillment, right? Naturally, you're going to have more positive thoughts because you fulfilled this itch and that itch. And sometimes those itches make other people upset. And sometimes those itches, when you do scratch them, it makes you fulfilled, but it was an experience you needed to get around the corner to be more aware of the next hill to climb, right? But at the same time, when you start to elevate more positive thoughts, you have more positive thoughts to the people around you, and you want to help those people, and you feel more connected. And naturally, you'll see the world as an organism of everybody that's basically just like you, but from a different experience, right? And so you have compassion. You see yourself in other people's eyes. And so the compassion grows because you see them going through the things that you went through. And there's so many more reasons for you to have more patience and reasons to be happy and to do nice things for other people. I hope that helps.
It does. I'm getting one of the things that really kind of controls us. So in the background here, I've been preparing it, so I guess I can bring you in on it.
Let's go.
I'm. Are you familiar with Sigmund Freud's, the id and how it intersects with the ego and the superego? So I was, this is a psychiatric type theory about the id, the ego, and the superego and how they kind of interact. But in this, I was looking down here how in this the ego psychology model of the psyche, the id is a set of uncoordinated instinctual needs. The superego plays the moralization role via internalized experiences, and the ego is the perceiving, logically organizing agent that mediates between the id's instinctual desires and the demands of external reality and those of the critical superego. Freud compared the ego in its relationship to the id to a man on horseback. The rider must restrain and direct the superior energy of his animal, and at times allow for a satisfaction of its urges if he wants to keep it alive and the species healthy. The ego is thus in the habit of transforming the id's will into action as it were its own. I can appreciate how that kind of all encapsulates how it all kind of plays upon itself, but distilling that from the more philosophical dialogue you're having here, and the ego separate from how Freud discusses it, the ego as how we socially understand it. Sometimes it takes psychedelics, or it takes, severe meditation, or, transcendent education. But we need to kill the ego. And that here's the reality of an American culture. The ego is what keeps this competitive nature facilitating and growing at such a high rate. But at the same time, that symptom of such a strong ego is what's kind of infecting us. So it's kind of like a super potion that, while it makes you great and strong, it also is poisonous and killing you from the inside. So it's kind of finding that delicate balance. And so if you could create a community that continues to strive for better, but through maybe some of those avenues I presented, finds a way of killing the ego, then you're still competitive. You're still trying to conquer and grow, but you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for us. And the second you're living for the us and no longer yourself, that's the real goal. I mean, but that's the problem. Living in the purple and the moderate, like that's what the whole mechanism around us is targeting that position, that platform. If you try to take on that role in this world, you are waging against the machine that stands to lose it all if you succeed.
I want to ask you a question.
Please.
Speaking of ego, right? That is you identifying yourself as separate. That's your survival, keep you alive, right? And
Right, yeah, sure.
your id is part of that as far as helping with the direction. So I want to ask you a question. Do you think that putting people in a place of needing to survive is associated to the ego growth and dedication to the ego?
Well, you went a different way with that question, so than I expected. So you're inquiring if the need to survive, follow up with the second part, dictates.
Do you feel that there's a correlation between survival mentality and living in your ego?
Well, so the way Freud discusses it, you can have an ego that isn't one that prioritizes yourself. It just
True.
identifies your individuality. So I think that could still exist without the need for survival, this like disparity. I think the need for survival is what crafts the ego into prioritizing the self over anything else. And that's why there's such an investment in either making you desperate and in survival mode, or if you're comfortably numb, making you feel like you're actually desperate and in survival mode. So there's people that are so far from survival mode, like take Mark Zuckerberg. Like, dude, hey, homie, you don't need more. You're good. You're good. Like, you're good. Like, if some people just were like, I'm good. Joe Rogan could start selling his toenails if he wanted. But at the same time, I don't need more money. He built a comedy club at a net loss deficit he found a niche that he likes, an art that he appreciates, comedy. And as a humanitarian, just giving back, here's just a comedy club at a deficit, just so I can be a peddler furthering something that I appreciate. Like, again, it could be horseback riding. Like, find the thing that you'd appreciate, but there's the difference, like, take religion. There's a difference between Jameis Winston on a 3-8 dog shit Browns team, still just out here like, it's all to the Lord and bringing positivity and being like, everybody across the league is in love with this guy, and he's just on a terrible team. And we all still are just like, we love Jameis. And he's become, everybody says he's not going to go into talk sports after he retires. He's going to be a preacher. But then you have some like Christian mogul who has 9 private planes and 10 churches across the country, and it's become some like franchise corporate church. And he's out here saying like, give me more. Jameis is not asking for anything. He's doing it for free. And yet it's the same thing, right? It's still like the same pursuit in the name of Christ. So it's just interesting how you could be somebody who's like, I'm getting into horseback riding, like keep it with something like that. You could just do it for fun, and you're not hurting, and you're not promoting, you're not progressing. You're just experiencing, and that's okay. I don't think there's anything admirable about it, but it's okay. Or you could be somebody that's like, I really love horseback riding, and I'm going to get into horse rehabilitation, and I'm going to have a farm where I rehab horses, or I'm going to have a farm where horseback riding is really expensive. So you could do it so like inner city people or those that can't afford it could come and, utilize it at your farm. There's ways about it. And then there's people that are like, into horse racing, and they've got, multiple farms, and it's like, I'm just here to take over. I'm owning horses, and it's become like a whole business. It's a delicate balance. Where do you want to be in there? Yeah, I think when it comes to the ego, you can have an ego that isn't in survival mode has a recognition of individuality. I'm on my own. I'm responsible for myself. But if I play my part strong enough and well enough, I, for the greater me, can promote the whole, which is, so I guess when I long-winded, you can have your individuality not being in survival mode with still the promotion of the hive first.
It's balance. It's a constant balancing effect. And in trying to keep that balanced, that's the fun part. If you can always keep it balanced, why are you here?
So true. So true.
I was talking to
So
my
go ahead, please.
I was talking to my niece about that. And I'm like, oh man, I haven't like last time I saw this girl, she was 3 years, like 10 years old. And then before that, she was like 7. So I'm like, all right, you're about to go to college. And this subject came up where she's trying to do this, she's trying to do that. And I'm like, so if you were perfect and you had everything, would it be fun? No, everybody would be boring.
right.
Everything would be boring. If you knew exactly how much salt to put on, like just if you just were perfectly skilled at everything, it would be boring. It reminds me of games. It reminds me of when I first got my first experience with cheat codes back in the day. Grand Theft Auto, the God mode.
Yes.
I loved that game. And then I got access to God mode and I went bananas and did things that I regretted. And I just wanted to experience everything hardcore. And then I stopped playing the game. It was no fun anymore. I didn't have to do any missions to get money. It didn't matter if I got 5 stars and the military was after me because I can't really die and I'll just keep waking up with all like there was no consequences and I just stopped playing the game. Right? Well, it's like it's almost like it's annoying that you have to play the game without the cheat code, but then at the same time, we're constantly looking for the cheat code. Like how many times do you see a program, someone offering you the cheat codes too, and then your pain point, right? It's like we're trying to skip, and then okay, so you have all this energy, but do you feel satisfied? Like, oh, what's the next thing? It's just like whack-a-mole at this point. But if you understand what makes you truly happy and the whys and the origin point, then there's less moles to whack,
Right.
right?
Right.
You're gonna end up petting the mole, and that's just weird. No, I'm kidding. But you know what I'm saying? Like, then it's a healthy relationship with the game you choose to play, and their journey on finding out why that game was fun to begin with is another game. And so
Right.
instead of thinking of it as constantly needing to win the game, instead of saying, you know what, this is fun, a cool exercise for me, what I used to do to gain appreciation and patience is I would fast forward my imagination to when I was 90 years old. And I say was, right? Interesting phrasing there. Until let's say you're 90 years old, and then you think back upon your life on all the opportunities that you had, all the decisions you made, all the mistakes you made, and ask yourself, would I do it again or would I do it differently? And would I have taken those decisions that seriously? Right? And then if you said, you know what, you get one chance to go back in time and do it over again. But the difference is you have your memories. How would you live your life differently? Would
Yeah.
you be in the moment more often? Would you hug your loved ones and your friends a little bit longer, especially the ones that you haven't seen in a while? Right? How many times do you see family
I don't
each
know,
year?
man. We tell ourselves that all the time, and now we're not young, and so I am getting to a point where I am facing my mortality. You've experienced your grandparents pass, and that's a hit, and you're seeing your parents age. So now it's that confrontation with my parents' mortality, and really, I mean, dude, you look at Joe Biden and it's like, whoa. And then I look at my parents and I go, oh my gosh, like you're really not far behind his number. And that dude's a billionaire where China's giving him free islands. So like if he can't afford the super magic health that they tell us is like hidden from the rest of us, if he doesn't have it, like mom and pop aren't going to have that. So like they're going to be out of here checking out soon. I know that feeling I'm going to have when they're not here, that like I didn't hug them enough, that like I shouldn't have felt, annoyed when I shouldn't feel annoyed when I come home from work and my mom wants to talk to me. And it's like, yeah, but I'm exhausted and I need to get on to the next thing. I don't have time. And I tell myself, well, one day you're going to look back at that and go, you wish you could be annoyed by mom. At that point, I will feel that way. But like, are we honestly going to like ignore the very human reality? Like I'm living in this matrix, not the fantastical matrix in 20 years. This is the matrix I'm in right now. And I'm fucking annoyed. I've just been at work all day and I have so much more shit I have to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, I am never feeling like I'm neglecting the love that I overwhelmingly have for them. And so to like cast this, this emotion that you have at one time on something you should have felt at that time ignores why you felt that way to begin with. It's like, it's so easy for you to say on a Sunday that you slept in, had a cup of coffee, you're financially set, and you just miss mom. Yeah, dude, you wish you could have hugged her, but you just got bitched at by your boss. This day went on 2 hours longer than it should have. And mom, I got to get to the studio because we have the live show, and I'm going to do that till 10 p.m. I love you, but I didn't prepare enough, and I got to take advantage of every minute I have. So I got to get go. Like, it's irrational, it's unrealistic. And so you got to be conscious of those things. Like we always we're quick to beat ourselves up and slow to take the moment and reflect on like why we're at where we're at. So one of the things I circle around is when you talk about God mode, like that position totally resonates with me, right? You got Grand Theft Auto and you could play the missions, or you could just steal cars and be a menace on the street. And then you rack up stars for the police to chase you. And you've got all these cheat codes then that if you're playing, the right mode, you could get rid of all the stars. You could rack up, be a total menace and you're a joker across town. And then you get 5 stars and you just wipe them away. Or you go into God mode where your health can't be tarnished. You can't run out of ammo and you can do everything you want. But the second you achieve that, like the second you punch in a cheat code, the second you get to that realm, you're also not in the game. Game is competition. Game is adversity. Game is all of these other elements involved. The second you wipe them away, you're in the lounge. You're in the hot tub. You're in the pool. You're not in the game. Game is competition. Game is challenge. You're no longer in the challenge. And so, yeah, dude, when you're in the game, the whole thing is defeating the game. Like, there's all these elements coming at me. How do I defeat them? It's kind of like the King Kong, or, what is it? The Donkey Kong game, the classic with Mario. There's all these barrels coming, like, yeah, dude, I need to jump all these barrels and get to the top. And whatever, like, if it's a line of hurdles to get the cheat code that gets me to the top, then that was the game. Like, the game was getting the thing that got me to the top. I beat Donkey Kong. But the second you beat the game, you're no longer in the game. The game's over. So you might as well be dead. I guess what the takeaway here is that the game itself, once you reach the finish line is you're dead. Boom, gone. It's over. Until then, even when you're set, look at Joe Biden. He's still not done. 74. Just keep on running. And look at how many people, when they retire, they lose that fulfillment we've talked so much about. They lose the motivation and they just get into something else. I'm going to go help at the food clinic. It's in our nature to where we can't just sit idle. We have to continue. So it's almost like the game is perpetual. You're always playing it. Whatever code you get, you're never going to get God mode. Just telling you, not in this one, not in this game. But even if you found certain cheat codes like stem cells, right? Like what was a hurdle for my grandma probably won't be for me, right? Just put those baby cells in my knee and I'm marching along. I think you're always going to be playing until the game shuts off because that's the finish line. I don't know. That's my diatribe.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts before I have one last thing I really want to talk with you about?
Yeah. I would just say to address what you're saying, one of the things that comes to mind is the idea of becoming more, right? What are you becoming? And that's why games become so popular because you're level 1, level 2, level 3. And it was annoying getting there, but the challenge of you getting there is like, I'm proud of myself and I earned this medal, this armor, whatever it is, right? And when you get too many cheat codes, did you really earn it? Do you feel like you deserve that? And you'll know because you'll have to face other people that earned it. And that's another harsh truth when you use the cheat codes and you're like, aha, I fooled everybody, including myself. And then you run into someone else who got no cheat codes and they got scars. Like that guy with the scar across their face. There's a reason why he's got a scar. You don't know. It could have been him trying to flat iron his face, but you don't know. It could have been a tiger. There's mystery in it. And so you proceed with caution and then you get your ass beat. And in your mind, you're a level 5, but you're a level 1.5 with a bunch of fancy stuff on because Jimmy gave you some codes, whatever the case may be, right? But that's part of the game. If you treat it like a game and you enjoy the process, there's less stress involved, right? The burnout is less of it. You avoid burnout, you avoid stress when you are in line with yourself, because then you'll have more patience and then you'll have more fun. When you start to disalign from yourself, you're in conflict, and conflict breeds stress. So conflict is when you are trying to do two different things that aren't aligned. And that was like a basic thing that I learned in like biology, and my brain just exploded. I was like, wait, so that's conflict. Yeah, I'm trying to do A and B, but they're not related, but I want both of them at the same time. I want my cake and eat it too, but it's not going to be there if I eat it. But if I give a piece to a friend of mine, I can still have a little bit. Like my brain's just smoking. But at the end of the day, it's those cheat codes. It's that God mode. It's playing the games. Have fun playing the game. Fulfillment is just knowing that you're on the right path, and also know that and be okay with not having the cheat codes, because what would you rather do? Get to the end and be alone, or be happy?
Right. Oh, I love that. It's experience and challenges are the name of the game, and that's what we're here for. I have one last thing I want to address with you or pick your brain on. You've exceeded the 100 episodes. That's kind of the milestone of whether or not you're going to be a real podcast in this world. They say once you break 100, you can start calling yourself a podcast. And I recently doing the same. That's the reason I say it is.
Congrats.
It's anyway. You pass the precipice and you bring on a spokesperson who's been across the internet for quite some time, championing the position that we are on a flat earth with two lights, rotating above us and potentially being in a dome. So having David Weiss on totally shocked me. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And not for the reason that I wouldn't want to talk to him. I'd love to talk to him. And Not that I think the position he champions is that crazy either. It's that, you know, wow, what an interesting conversation. So I want to ask, one, what are some of the takeaways from that conversation that may have changed your perspective or been more convincing? And maybe are there anything from that conversation or your research that followed or came with it that maybe decredits that position? Like, and then I want to walk that road with you to see kind of where you may lie personally.
Well, that's a big question.
I know, dude. That's a big conversation. I thought it was funny.
Let's end with this. It was an interesting conversation. I did my best to get some real good questions. And then he pulls out this freaking app where he's like, I answered all of those and more. I have the app, but I guess I could start with some things that made me question that I had to do some research myself. He would mention things like when you go to Antarctica and the people that try to say that the sun, we're talking about flat earth theory, right? And
Right.
to prove flat earth, he starts to try and debunk and discredit people that are saying that why don't you just go to Antarctica and see that the sun never goes down? And there are people that claim to have video footage of it going down, but it's actually a loop, right? Or so it's, and then how many people can go to Antarctica and
That's
be able
the
to pull
thing
that
that
stuff
sells me
off?
on it. John, you know me, right? Like, if anything, if you were to put one pillar under me, it's just distrust for the narrative that comes from the government, or I
Yes.
just don't trust governments, period. And you have gotten all of the governments in the world to agree on one. You haven't been able to do that ever, but you've gotten them all to agree no one's allowed to go to Antarctica. That to me is insane. We can't even agree on if women can drive, but no one's allowed to go to Antarctica, and we all agree. That's insane to me.
I feel like flat earth theory and people that really support it and really dive into it, the growing numbers proves that point where there's a growing number of people that don't trust the narrative. And that's the biggest takeaway that I got from it without having to decide, if earth is flat or globe or globally flat or round, circular.
Right.
Just, it's at the end of the day, that is the overarching dialogue that I feel is important to me to address and to continue to argue something that you yourself are going to have a hard time finding a proof of is a hard place to be because right I remember I don't know why this is coming up, but I'll go with it. I remember as a child, completely somewhat unrelated, arguing. This was like elementary school. We were arguing where do babies come from. Okay, we've never seen a baby come out of a body, but we know it happened. And so we would argue. So there were people that said belly button all the way because that's a hole and we don't know why it's there. Some people said the vaginal route, which I didn't understand the anatomy back then, so it made no sense to me because that's I don't understand. The only thing that I've had experience of where large things came out of me was the anus. So that was my argument. I put all my eggs in that basket. I said, because that is from my personal experience, right?
You were dropping giant baby loads.
And ironically, at a young age, around that time, that was my challenge. I always had gut health issues. So there were some times where, like, let's just say it was a giant baby, right? And so I'm like, maybe women are designed to handle that type of load. It makes sense. Their bodies are designed for that, which ironically, yes, just different, wrong hole. So so going away from the human anatomy and going back into the anatomy of the planet, that whole theory of like, we're not going to know for sure
Bingo.
until enough people have the ability to rocket up and out and not be associated with a shadowy entity, and people and it's live. Like, there's just got a way for you
Right.
to, without a shadow of doubt, witness this, either you yourself or someone else. And then the other direction, go to Antarctica and keep going, keep that live footage going and keep doing it. And then have multiple points of reference, more than one. One person can't do it because you can't siphon data through one person. That's the problem we have right now, because there's
Yep.
a small funnel of people that are willing to do it, have the money to do it, and then have done something that they're able to report back. And then you have these accounts of people that went there and don't really talk much about it. So it's we're so close. But then one of those things where it's like the I forgot what the terminology is, but we're getting to a place where technology is growing fast enough that will enable us to actually find out the truth. So I'm reserving for that. If
Right.
you
Yeah.
have the time and are curious enough, I encourage you to follow your fulfillment, and whether or not it is flat or round. If that is something if that is an itch you must scratch, instead of waiting, right?
Right.
Go for it. I'm all for it. And that's where, for me, I'm like, it's not that big of an itch, because I have my thoughts on, I want to see, like, it wasn't until I actually saw, well, yeah, I saw a baby come out of a female, and it was a video in high school, and it was just wrecked my brain. But I'm not saying that that was what made me decide. I'm just saying, like, stuff like that helps you, it's proof. Like, it comes out. You can just go to the hospital and then just, you can see it. It's not the same for the flat earth. And I want to answer part of one of the questions that you had around like my thoughts. There was something that he said that wasn't enough for me. And at that time, my brain was still trying to catch up on other stuff.
Right. Oh yeah. I know
And
that.
so, yeah, obviously, and one of those things was Ecuador, right? The equator area, the equatorial
Oh yeah.
region. I asked him, why does water or storms,
Yes.
why do they spin? I don't know. I think it's like clockwise above the equator and counterclockwise below the equator. Like, if it's flat, it shouldn't change. It should just spin depending on the wind, but it's uniform. And I'll give you his answer, and then
Oh no.
I'll tell you why it didn't sit well with me, because all
Yeah.
the other ones, I'm like, I got to do more research. That one I had a personal
Great
experience.
question though, John.
Yeah. Hey,
Brilliant question.
online research. So he said, if you were to imagine Earth as a circular plane, like a pizza, and this is me trying to describe it without having a visual, and let's say that pizza has one pepperoni and one mushroom. That mushroom is the moon, and the pepperoni is the sun, and that pepperoni just goes around the above the surface, but around in a circle, right? And
Right.
it's in the middle of the
Oh, he's
like
saying
it's
some
in
that are
between the middle of
inside
the
of
pie.
it and
Yeah, like,
then the others are outside. Because really, the
wait,
flat
let me
earthers say
finish.
that the moon and the sun are two lights that are like
Yes.
above it, above the earth, and they rotate. So you're
Yeah, first you
saying,
gotta digest that.
dang. So his equator is the middle circle that those lights make over the pizza, right? And you're either outside the or inside. Am I interpreting that correct?
Essentially, the sun, its path around the flat surface is
Did he
where the
really use a
equator is.
pizza?
No, I'm just using it.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, dang,
No, he has
that's their professional.
his app, right? His app, thank you, I'm not professional. His app shows a map of what the earth would look like with the time zones and everything. And that's another thing, time zones. I don't even know how. I should ask him about that. So the sun goes, its path is above the equator. So I'm like, okay, so how does that change the spiral effect? And he says, well, think of like when you're canoeing, right? And you have your paddle in the water. I see the eyes rolling. And you look at the paddle, and on each side, the water is you have a vortex opposite each other on each side
No
of the
way.
paddle. And so that's how he explained why the wind direction of these storms spiral out. They're spiraling from the continuation of the sun moving around the planet. And I said, okay, let's go on top of that. Theoretically, with my lack of understanding on how uh, storms work, what about this? I went to Ecuador. I went to the middle. Okay. They did say that the weather there is fantastic and they only have 2 seasons. I think it's just I think summer and winter, but like the degrees of separation is like 10 degrees. And the only time it it's beautiful. The only time it changes is if you go, up closer into the clouds and it's colder, or as it's just it's a regional thing. It's a mountain thing. That's how you get the different weather patterns. But at the end of the day, it's just 2 seasons. And so we go
Wow.
to the middle of the world, and it's this like museum of sorts, and it's this experience. And there's a line, and this woman has this, it looks kind of like a sink, right? And then there's a bucket that captures the water underneath it. So I'm really, really paying attention because I'm like, okay, let me see if she's slick. Does she just pour it? Does she throw it in at an angle, right? And so she just pours it water straight to the middle area. That's it. No shaking. And when she was, below the equator, it spiraled naturally one direction. And then when she went to the middle, it just went straight. And then when she went above, it spiraled the other way. And she poured it exactly the same. She
Oh, wow.
wasn't manipulating anything, and it was the same device. So I'm like, okay, there's something going on, because like this is just, come on now. Come on.
Right.
And then I told him that I had that experience, and he said, these people, no, I don't think I told him I had that experience, but I just said, like, what about the people that do that? They show that spiral effect. And he says, it's easy to influence the spiraling of the water going down. And in my mind, I'm like, I was fried at that point. I'm like, did that really happen like that? And then afterwards, I'm like, no, it didn't. I paid attention.
Right,
Plus, we did other stuff. You can balance an egg on a nail, right? We all tried.
At the equator.
Yes, you can.
Oh, that's so cool.
On the flat part, not like the flat part's hard enough, to be honest.
Right.
And man, one of my cousin-in-law, he was the only person that was
Whoa.
able to do it. We all failed, but he was able to do it. And we
See,
approached
now
it
that
with
would
it was already
convince me.
balanced. And the other thing that we did was they have the line, and it kind of reminded me of the test to see if you're intoxicated, and the cop pulls you over, you're intoxicated, that test.
Yeah.
You doing this normally, not everybody can do it, but you put one foot in front of the other, you put your hands out to the side straight, and you look up, and then you walk forward, because that makes it the hardest for you to walk in a straight line. And so if you walk a couple feet to the left or to the right of the equator, you can do it. It's still a struggle, but it's proving a point where you're just at that point where you barely can hold on, but you're really relying on gravity and the flow of gravity,
Sure.
right? You might have micro movements where you grew up walking in the northern or southern plains, or hemispheres. So, but when you start walking on that line, 2-3 steps, you're done. You can't. You're it's a struggle to keep balance.
So what does it do? It makes you fall over? Like you
Yeah,
can't.
you're just having a hard time. I'll see
Oh,
if I can
wow.
find the video, but I was struggling, and I am stubborn, and I wanted to be like the one person, the one human. I'm like, I'm going to prove them wrong. Nope, 3 steps, and I'm just going to the side. I think I went to the right. Maybe that's the right spiral. I don't know. I was just struggling. Like, I didn't have a reference. I was looking up. My hands were out. When I wasn't on the line, I can move forward like 5 steps in a straight line. That struggling, I couldn't. I was like, what is going on with me? Something's off. And so that was like that. That's when I'm like, I don't know.
And I like the way you presented that whole position, because there's a difference between operable knowledge and knowledge with a capital K, known and reliable universal laws and truths knowledge, versus things that you don't really know but are reliable enough that you can repeat it, like time and all these other aspects of our reality tell us that we're on a ball and the moon and the sun rotate around us. I mean, there's really no explaining off the Ecuadorian experience. I mean, it goes to show, I've never really thought of that trump card, and the fact that he's bringing out paddles in a canoe, that is unsatisfactory. So I feel like the position is still totally crippled. But that's the symptom of a curious mind. Like, you shouldn't ever rely on people for universal laws and truths, but you should be able to learn from people around you and adopt enough to where you progress and can operate at a strong capacity in this realm around you. So do I know we're on a ball? Exactly how you said it is no, not until you and I hop in the Rethink rocket and go out of here and look back at the moon, or at the moon or the Earth. I'll be satisfied with either. Like, true. No, I look at the moon every day. I want to see Earth. Until I see Earth, I don't know. Yeah. But there's enough information that at least tells me socially, this is what I should adopt and this is how I should operate. But we understand that the world around us has agendas, and they can be nefarious. I can't think of his name now, but the Nazi that ran NASA. Because Operation Paperclip after World War II, we just kind of did recess picking of the scientists in Germany, and Russia got half and we got half. And hold
it's
on,
gonna
John,
bother you if you don't know. Yeah,
I just need the satisfaction of having it. You've heard the name, I'm sure.
So I'll throw in another thing too.
Please.
Another thing I heard was apparently we have reflectors on the moon, so that you can use a green laser to measure distance. So
yes.
I haven't had the itch to go down that rabbit hole and to go more into that explanation of the setup for us to measure the distance. But that's another thing to look into. If any of your listeners want to go down there, feel free to look that one up. And then there's another video. I think the algorithm of my social media picked up on my recent conversations around the subject, because then a couple of videos popped up, and it shows those live recording interviews of the astronauts in their station, and the female's hairs look like it was spray painted upward. And then they showed the difference of their hair, where they would move their head and it would just be stiff, versus other people that go into the planes that give you the experience of no gravity, and their hair is nice and flowy, and it's like Little Mermaid.
So John, that's where it gets scary, right? Like, NASA has admitted they have never once published a non-edited version of Earth. Everything is a CGI photo, and then when people start asking them about it, they're like, well, no, we're really just kind of highlighting colors and because you wouldn't see stars if it wasn't for our magic. If we weren't doing the magic with the lights and the thing, then you wouldn't see the stars out there. So you're welcome. We're just trying to make them pretty. But Then there's like weird elements where, like you said, these videos seem the biggest pool in the world is with NASA, and then they film things in the pool. It's almost like they're trying to make it look like they're in space. Werner von Braun was the name of the Nazi that we picked to run NASA. And so again, if we're going to talk about all of the kind of asterisk curiosities that surround NASA, why would the leading scientists that if anybody would know with a capital K, we are on a ball and all of the science we're sold is totally true. If anybody would know through experience, it would be Werner von Braun. And yet someone needs to explain to me why on his tombstone, so there's this conspiracy theory that, the government tried blowing up the firmament, which is the dome that surrounds us in this flat earth, and they were unsuccessful. That was kind of the major pillar in testing nukes in the oceans. But somebody needs to explain why Werner von Braun, who would totally believe in all the sciences and all the truths, why does his tombstone say, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shall showeth his handiwork"? So it's almost like there's this concession that through all of his work, the truth still lie. And there is a firmament. And again, I don't subscribe to all that because socially I got to live in this world. And
Who wrote that on his tombstone?
yeah, he did.
Wow, what a twist.
Ting, 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 ting. No, you're right. Somebody put it on there. So I guess, look at you. You thinker, you. That's pretty clever. Somebody else could have just tried to throw a monkey wrench in the gears on his behalf. Wow. As somebody that lives in the outskirts of the creepy corners of the internet, I don't think anybody's ever thought of that. That like everybody just assumes if it's on your tombstone, it was your wishes for that to be on your tombstone. Regardless, you're never the one that gets to put it on the tombstone. So you have full faith in the tombstone carver that they're following through on your wishes. But man, what a great psyop if after his death, you just want to create schizophrenic people across the country and you chisel that on the stone.
And then the steps it takes from what you put in your will, and then who approves that, and then even if you do go that route, and there are people that do the research and they go and they find the written book, and then even then it gets like, I'm not saying this is what happened to him, but I'm saying people do the due diligence and they go and they research, and then there's gaps and there's people that make mistakes. I mean, honestly, at one point I had a different birthday on 3 forms of federal IDs. And then I walk up to get a passport, and then they give me the most shady look behind the window, and I'm like, I know, and
How does that happen? No, I don't know. How does that happen?
I don't know. So if that can happen, and of course, like a federal ID multiple times, then no one's perfect, and things can get a little screwy, and somebody can take advantage of that.
You're not a real person. You're an alien, and we always knew it. No, what I can appreciate, John, is as you said it, you're that higher frequency. Thank goodness I'm talking to somebody on 5G because I didn't even think of that. I'm over here in 3G. I'm still on the iPhone 3.
I still want to know what my level is at. I have to find somebody that for sure is above 200 to gauge me, which is, you can't just guess on your own because you can just tell yourself, oh, I'm amazing. Yeah, exactly. So like that's on my to-do list. Find someone who is certified in like their level through multiple people, whatever. Because you can't be tested on your level unless you find someone who's above 200. But sorry, I digress.
No, don't digress. John, I appreciate you giving me your time. This has been nothing but a special conversation. I always look forward to opportunities of catching up with you. And I'm very excited to, observe and partake in this new journey through immersive meditation. I think a lot of people can benefit from that. And I hope people look into that. You've got a lot of a range of knowledgeable content across your platform. So beyond the New Age Human, tell people where to go, how to find you, what they should do, where they can connect with you further.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the kind words. I would say to make it easy, just go to NewAgeHuman.com. You might have to throw in the whole like HTTPS colon stuff if it gets an error. I'm not that techie, and you might have to do that. So don't give up. NewAgeHuman.com. There is a link in there at the top. I encourage you, if you like this episode and you wanted to know a little bit more of like just how to get more clarity and manage stress, because we're all dealing with it. I am offering a free meditation, so you can click on the top link or message, or how you just go to newagehuman.com and just hit contact or hit one of the links that show like free meditation, and I'll be more than happy to connect with you and offer a session to see how far we can go with that. So I'll keep it simple like that.
Awesome. And be sure to check it out, because I'm telling you, Jon has done a lot of the work or just in this short period, last 3-4 years. You've really done a lot of the boots on the ground work, and you can find it all at New Age Human. So be sure to do so. Otherwise, guys, I appreciate you joining us. We go live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. That's our live show. But we also have the podcast. We have different channels. We have our reactions channel every Sunday. But you can find it all on one central place, and that's at our website at www.rethinktankpodcast.com. If we made you laugh, if we made you think, the best thing you could do to support this show is hit that notification bell, subscribe, and like, and all the other things. But be sure to comment, because the whole purpose of the Rethink Tank is to have your perspective and your vision involved. So be sure to add a little bit of an added dynamic to the dialogue and head on over to the comments. But otherwise, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.